Look quick or you'll miss it, because I'm about to go fishing in Alaska. Hello, everyone. A little bit different start to this Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast, because I am about to launch a fishing trip, and I thought I'd get a podcast in really quick before I go. But the knives I'm taking up there to process the salmon, the Dolly Varden I hope to get, is this nice set from Knives of Alaska. What could be more appropriate for an Alaskan fillet knife than a knife made by Knives of Alaska? If you're looking for a knife that's got good grip on the handle, so when you're handling those slimy fish, you don't slip off and cut yourself, and you need a big, long blade for those big, long salmon, well, this combo set from Knives of Alaska is something you want to look for. And when you buy your first knife from Knives of Alaska and mention RSO, Ron Spomer Outdoors, you will get a 10% discount for your first purchase. So you might want to check that out. Knives of Alaska. Now, let's get to the shooting part of the program. And we have got a lot of folks asking about rebarreling or rechambering. Can you turn, for instance, a 300 PRC into a 6.5 PRC? We're going to address some of those from our patrons, but first I want to hear from Old Ted. Old Ted writes in to talk about losing his hearing from too much shooting. He is really concerned about this. See what he has to say. He listened to our broadcast with Brandon Maddox from Silencer Central, all about suppressors. And this is his response. Ron and Brandon, this is great information. Thank you both. I have a Banish 30, which took almost a year to get after starting the process at Silencer Central headquarters in Sioux Falls. It works wonderfully on a 6.5 Creedmoor. I have severe hearing loss and can only wish that this service had been available years ago. I hear plenty and I understand very little. I've answered questions that haven't been asked more times than I know. In all honesty, gentlemen, they ain't pretty, but pretty is as pretty does, and those suppressors do. I'd love another chance at saving my hearing. So that's just great advice for young shooters especially, or anyone who still can hear pretty well, because I've got a similar problem. You just get too many loud noises, and it damages the tiny little hair cells, they tell me, in your ears that transmit the sound to your brain. So you lose high-frequency sounds, and you will hear people talking with some background music or road noise or anything in the background, and you cannot understand them. The volume is there, but the definition isn't. And something like our Shell Shock hearing muffs, sponsor for us here at RSO, they really help with protecting your hearing. So do get yourself some hearing muffs, some foam earplugs, anything that's going to knock that sound off when you're shooting. And over the years, you're going to really come to appreciate that. All right, let's see. Here's Sterling, who's been asking a lot of questions about changing his barrel or changing the chamber in his barrel to a different cartridge, and he's a little bit confused. Several other people writing in seem to have similar confusion. I think we've all heard about reaming out a new chamber in your barrel or changing the barrel diameter to accommodate a new cartridge. And I think we get the idea that if we have an old barrel that it seems to be shot out, isn't accurate anymore, can't we convert it to shooting something else? And we can sometimes, depending on what you want to switch to. So Sterling asked if it was possible to chamber the 300 PRC that he had that wasn't very accurate. He didn't like it. He wanted to go to a 6.5 PRC, but he wasn't sure he could do it. And of course, I don't know if he's fully understanding this or not, and I hate to insult him by suggesting it, but I think we need to start from the floor here, the foundation, which is the bore of your current barrel. If your barrel is a 30 caliber, no, you cannot chamber it to a smaller diameter bullet, because obviously that little bullet's got to go down that bigger bore, and it's not going to be sealed into bore and get pushed out. It's going to rattle around in there. So you have to start by having the cartridge throw the same diameter bullet, stick with the same caliber. So if you have a 30 caliber bore for a 300 PRC, you could feasibly change it to any other 30 caliber. Could you change it to a 300 Win Mag or a 300 Rum or a 308 Winchester or a 30-06 or a 30-30? Maybe. at least you've got the right bore diameter. Now you have to determine how much room you have to rechamber it. With a smaller cartridge, you are not going to be able to, because the chamber area has already been reamed out to the diameter of the larger one, unless you can cut the old chamber off and then go forward. But then your barrel is tapering down and you probably don't have the room for it that way. The other concern is the length. If you've got, let's say, a 308 chamber and you want to chamber it to something larger like a 300 Win mag, you might have enough room in the back of the barrel, the chamber area, to open it up, ream it out to the larger cartridge, but then you've gone from a short action rifle to a long action. So if your rifle's action length is actually fitting just the 308 cartridge, it's not going to fit the 300 Win mag cartridge, which is a long action or a standard length action. So those are two of the big things you have to consider. If you have any real concerns about it, ask your gunsmith. You're not going to be doing this yourself. You're going to have to take it to a gunsmith or send it off to a barrel maker. Many of those will do it for you. Some will just send you the barrel, but others will put it on your rifle. I know Shaw Barrels in Pennsylvania does that. So they will not only rechamber an old barrel, they'll sell you a new barrel and then chamber that. And as Sterling and I, he's one of my patrons, we were going back and forth about all of this, we discussed the possibility of a new barrel. He said, maybe I just put a new barrel on it then. Can I get that chambered for 6.5 PRC? Will it fit my rifle? So then he's considering that length of the action we talked about, plus the diameter of the bolt face and whether or not that can handle the base of the cartridge. And the 6.5 PRC has got I think the same base diameter as the 300 PRC that he was shooting, so that would be possible. Just another thing you have to consider. So you've got all of those things tied in. It's possible to rechamber to a lot of different things, but there are so many different cartridges out there and different action lengths and magazine lengths. You've got to consider that as well. Will the cartridge fit into the magazine space if you've got a magazine under your bolt action or something? So it sounds confusing, and it probably is not all that confusing, but the possibility is there. Now, why do people want to do this? Sometimes they just want a different cartridge. They decided whatever they're shooting now they don't like, and they want to switch. I think it's probably less expensive to just get a whole nother rifle. You've got to pay for taking a rifle somewhere, shipping it somewhere, getting that barrel put on, paying for all of that, plus the new barrel. Pretty soon you're close to having the same thing. So you might want to just look into another rifle. Now, if you've got a really expensive stock and action, then it would be worth putting a different barrel on it. So consider all of those things. Now, there was someone else here asking about this. This looks like Ron. Ron says, I have a Remington 700 receiver. So that's just the receiver, the action part. And I want to rebarrel it to 2506 Remington. I have been looking at barrel manufacturers with the requirement that they can provide a barrel with a faster twist. I don't know what the definition of affordable is, but I want an affordable one, and it's not going to be a carbon fiber barrel. But I am looking at a McGowan's barrel, and they can go to as fast a twist as 1 in 7. My primary use will be for varmint and deer hunting. I am currently thinking a 24-inch barrel, but which twist? That has me waffling. I would like to shoot a 120 grain for deer and be able to go down to an 80 grain bullet, perhaps for coyotes. Your suggestion on which twist? I can go from 1 to 7, 1 7.5, 1 to 8, 1 to 9. I can't find any specs on bullet weight with a 1 to 8. Next is the contour of the barrel. I'm looking at something in the weight of a medium sporter barrel, something that I can easily carry, but not a pencil-thin barrel. I have read to not bother with fluting, but what do you think? Finally, I'm trying to find a stock. Where do I look for a stock supplier that can help with a custom barrel? I don't want to spend $900 on a carbon fiber stock. Is there a better profile that makes a stock selection easier? I have never done a custom barrel and would really appreciate sharing some of your vast knowledge. Well, I don't know how vast it is, Ron, but I'll try. Yeah, see, this is what I mean about the complicated factors. You're going to change the diameter of the barrel. Is that going to require you to change the stock? And oh my goodness, there's a lot of things to consider. But there are fairly simple solutions to all of this. Ron here is on the right track. So he's deciding how long he wants his barrel to be. That's almost never an issue with anything. You just make it as long as you think you need. 25-06 Remington would benefit from a long barrel like that, so I think that's a great option. The Remington 700 receiver, no problem fitting it with a 25-06 or anything else. The twist rate, too many people get all worked up about this twist rate stuff. And it seems to be this theory out there, or at least idea, a mistaken one, I'm sure, that you can have too fast of a twist to stabilize the lighter bullets or the shorter bullets. And that rarely happens. Yeah, I always say it's like spinning a top. Once you get that top stabilized, it can spin faster and it remains stabilized. It doesn't suddenly start to wobble and get unstable until it slows down, which is the equivalent of slow twist rifling. So don't freak out if you get a 1 in 7 twist to stabilize the heaviest bullet you want to shoot or the longest bullet, because once again, it's not the weight of the bullet, it's the length that requires faster twist. It's going to be fine shooting the shorter bullets. And I've proven that myself with several rifles. I've got them set up so that they'll handle the longest bullet I've got for that cartridge, and then I can go down to the shortest one, and it's still accurate. Now, there is a little bit of difference that bench rest shooters or extreme range precision shooters are concerned with, and it's a tiny little difference, and I don't know exactly what makes it happen. The bullet is still stabilized, but this over-stabilization issue does have a tiny effect on accuracy when it's precision shooting, but we're probably talking the difference in a group size of 0.1 of an inch. So for a hunting rifle, it really doesn't matter. So don't freak out about that. Ron, I would say with the barrel on your 25-06, 120 grain bullets traditionally have been stabilized in the traditional twists that are sold with 25-06 Remington rifles, and that's usually 1 in 10. Might be sometimes 1 in 9. But now they're starting to make longer, high BC bullets in 25 caliber, finally, and I applaud them for that. And if I remember right, Hornady has a 134 grain. Berger, I believe, has a 135 grain. Ace Bullet Blackjack has a 131, and then some of the copper companies now are coming out with some fairly long bullets that would also require that faster stabilizing. So go to burgerbullets.com. That website has a stabilization calculator in there, and you enter in the data on your bullet, and it will say whether or not it's going to be stable in a 1 in 9 twist or a 1 in 7 or a 1 in 14, whatever. And that's a great place to start. And then you can get the barrel twist rate optimized for the longest bullet you want to shoot. And then don't worry about the shorter ones. I think you're going to find that they're plenty accurate enough. Okay, I hope that... Oh, I had to talk to him yet about the barrel. If you go, let's say you've got a Remington 700 with a standard barrel channel in it to fit the standard barrel contour, and you want to go to a heavy barrel for more accuracy or more shots before it gets too hot, whatever the reason, you can take that old stock and sand out the channel to accommodate the bigger barrel. If you go to a lighter barrel, smaller one, you can glass bed the channel of the stock to fill it in. So there's options there. But if you need to buy a stock, there are plenty of inexpensive aftermarket stocks that should fit. Some of them are molded plastic of some kind, pretty inexpensive. There are some really good laminated ones. Boyd's of Mitchell specializes in laminated stocks, laminated wood that will fit just about any rifle you can imagine. They've got a deep, deep inventory there at Boyd's Gun Stocks. And then there are a bunch more that'll have the more elaborate hand-laid synthetic fiberglass Kevlar kinds of stocks. And then the price ranges are going to be from $100 up to as much as you want to spend. So it's all out there, guys. You just have to dig around and find it. But I think, Ron, that you're on the right track here, and you're pretty close already. So keep at it, and you should do just fine. Now, I had an interesting exchange with a patron who's named himself Hogboy. Hogboy, I thought that was kind of unusual. But he had some fun things to say, one of which was of really interest to me was the 30-06. I've been questioning the viability of the 30-06 in sales because out here in the West, I just don't see them very often on the gun shops anymore. Kids don't seem to be buying them. The old guys will still shoot them because they already have them. But I'm starting to think that the 30-06 is maybe losing considerable popularity. And I've posted that a few times and gotten ridiculed for it. But this gentleman, Hogboy, said that he works in a shop and he's got some inside information. So here's it. I work in a small mom-and-pop gun shop part-time, and from what I've seen, the 6.5 Creedmoor caught on, but it's losing popularity pretty quickly here in the Midwest. In the shop, we're really seeing what we call the main four really come back to life. The 30-30, the 308 Winchester, the 270 Winchester, and the 30-06. Outside of those, it seems 25-06 and my favorite, the 7mm 08, are getting popular all of the sudden. We very rarely have anyone ask for the 6.5 Creedmoor anymore, and no one ever asks about the 6.5 PRC or the 7mm PRC. I know they still have their place out west, but here, they're already a thing of the past. Another one that is making a strange comeback in this area is the 257 Roberts. I still can't figure that one out. I can't think of anyone chambering new rifles in it, and ammo for it is really difficult to find. But we still get a couple of people a week coming in and asking for it. Well, I'll quit rambling now. I'm looking forward to your next video. It was a great hearing from you, Ron, Hogboy. So there you go. At least in Hogboy's area, somewhere in the Midwest, the 30-06 seems to be hanging right in there, and people are asking for it. So what is it like in your area, especially any of you who are working in gun shops or some aspect of the industry where you've got a handle on how much interest there is in various cartridges? Maybe we're seeing an imbalance from YouTube where fans of the new cartridges are eager to make that announcement and publish a bunch of things, whereas the more standard cartridge shooters don't, so we just don't hear about it. So what are sales looking like in your areas? All right, what else do we have to talk about today? Talking about popularity of calibers, I asked in a recent, I don't remember if it was a regular channel or the podcast channel, but I asked people about cartridges that they thought were the best ones for elk. It might be part of our elk week. At any rate, I'm starting to get comments from folks on their favorite cartridges. And here is one from Vernon. He's 67 years old, and he's got some serious insight after a year of a whole lifetime of hunting. He says, Ron, I was raised in Wyoming, and I have shot dozens of big game animals. Killing elk is one thing. Finding the dead elk is another. I never saw any elk shot with a cup and core bullet with an exit wound. No exit wound equals no blood trail. I lost my first elk I ever shot with my 700 Remington 30-06. I was hunting thick timber and using a cup and core bullet. The elk was only 60 yards away, but there was no blood trail. The next year, I bought a 338 Winchester Magnum and some 275 grain spear bullets. I shot a moose at 350 yards on the run. The bullet hit the shoulder, a rib, the lungs, another rib, the other shoulder, and exited the other side. I shot over a dozen elk with it. Always 2 holes, one in and a large exit wound. And there was always a blood trail. Today, there are fantastic bullets that retain 99% of their weight and give fantastic penetration, such as the Barnes tipped triple shock. And this brings 30 caliber bullets into the deadly killing machines. But I believe that the 338 Winchester Magnum is the greatest elk cartridge ever. And I have said that several times, even though I don't hunt with the 338 Winchester Magnum very often. I've recently gotten one, and I want to take it on an elk hunt because looking at the ballistics and comparing it to the different cartridges I've taken elk with over the years, including many of the 300 Magnums, the 325W, SM, and others, and I look at the numbers and just think that 338 Winchester Magnum really is kind of the optimum balance. So I will be looking at that over the next year as well. But Ron, thanks for that considerable experience and advice coming out of an elk hunter from Wyoming. Here is Strider. Every hunting channel covers the right caliber for elk every year. It is never solved, but it's great information, good data, and options. I always watch these. It's fun to dig in, and maybe someday we'll put this to rest. Nah, never. Love that you took the time to address bullets and break down how they all look and work. I agree. It's a big deal, the type of bullet. Likely one of the best videos I've seen on this, as you have covered so many elements of caliber, bullet, weight, diameter, etc. Thank you. Well, thank you, Strider. Let's see what Rob has to say. Went from a 0.28-inch group with one load to a 3.5-inch group with another in my Tikka 30-06. Oh, this must be in response to the Tikka video I did with a 30-06. No, that was a 308. That was the 308. So he's probably referring to some other data that we got. Oh, I know what this is. I asked a while back if folks had some really weird things happen when they were zeroing in the rifles or testing them for accuracy. Because I'm seeing some strange things, like one rifle I'll have, it will shoot 1.5 to even as much as 3.5-inch groups, and then suddenly I'll switch loads and I'll get under an inch just by changing the ammunition. I've known all my life that there's preferences. Every rifle, every barrel prefers one load to another one, and you hit the magic load and whoopee-ding, there you go. But I'm just wondering how far afield people have gone with these things. And I posted that and said, hey, what's the weirdest thing that you've ever shot? So that's what he is referring to. He went from his rifle shooting a 0.28-inch group, which is remarkably small, with one load, and then it jumped to a 3.5-inch group with another one. So wow, you've got to really watch what you're shooting. Here's someone called 0 Seconds. Isn't that crazy? I wonder how that can happen, yet it so often does. Jimmy says, I want to say it was my CZ 527 rifle chambered for a 7.62 by 39. I believe I tried some PPU ammunition and it shot 3 to 4 inch groups. Yet basic steel case was fine and shot sub 2 inch, and the Hornady SST was stellar, shooting sub minute of angle. There you go, guys. It just pays to try different loads. Here is Spotted Bass. My 280 Remington. It hates Remington ammunition. And Federal Premium Trophy Copper, very consistent for a non-hand load. So it sounds like he's found his load. So I think what the point there is, guys, just keep trying things and don't be shocked if your rifle suddenly shoots a 4-inch group. It just doesn't like that ammunition. Don't get freaked out. Try something different. And while you're thinking about that, I know a lot of people are going to say, I can't afford to keep buying this expensive ammunition just to see what shoots and doesn't shoot. You spend $50 on a box, you take 3 shots and they're all over the place, and you go, what do I do with the rest of these? So I think one of the keys, one of the tricks is to share with your friends, if you have any who have the same ammo, the same rifle, and you just try them out. You give 3 of yours to him and he gives you 3 of his, and etc. Another way is to note which bullet weight seems to be fairly accurate in your rifle. And if it's not, switch weights. Don't just switch brands. So if you're shooting a 150 and you're 308 and it's got great or bad accuracy, try a 165 or a 180. Not necessarily switch to a different 150 brand or bullet. Okay. Now, these are some that Betsy put together, so who knows? I think we're on pretty good terms this week, but you never know. We'll find out, right, honey? She's back there giving me the, I'm not quite so sure. This is from I Am Bear in response to a podcast in which I got roasted. Someone else roasted me, so now I Am Bear is probably going to jump in and turn up the heat. Some poor advice concerning rifle accuracy there, Ron. Oh, yeah, he's after me. A sheet of paper is not enough of a free float, not even close. You want a generous free float. And one sheet of paper has a thickness of about 0.004 inch, and that is not good enough. Also, you mentioned how to tighten action screws. You referred to them as bedding screws. Shame on me. You say don't tighten the rear screw too much or it could warp or twist the receiver and affect accuracy. This is absolutely false, especially on a properly glass-bedded rifle. They will never happen on a properly glass-bedded rifle. Keep in mind, if action screw torque has that much of an effect on rifle accuracy, you have a sick rifle. Does that make sense to you? That's what he asked. Does that make sense to you? Well, actually, I think you're kind of contradicting yourself here. You say it absolutely is false and it never happens. And then you say, but if it's not level, it happens, which was my point. That's why you do not tighten the tang screw as hard as the front screw under the receiver or the recoil lug. Because if you don't have a perfectly flat bedding surface all the way across the receiver, front ring to back ring, you can happen just what I said, put that torque into it, and that changes your accuracy. So I can't give you 5 gold stars for that one, but the part about the paper, you're not too far off. So what he's talking about with that 0.004 inch thing is when I demonstrate free floating a barrel, I'll take a sheet of paper like I'm showing right now, and I'll slide it under the barrel inside of the stock channel, and I'll slide it all the way back to see if there's that space there in which the barrel is not touching the stock. That's called a free-floating barrel. But he is right. Some barrels will vibrate violently enough when you shoot, or you'll get some pressure when you put it on a mounting surface like the bench or your hand or a fence post or something, and it will cause the two to touch, and then that affects the vibration. So he's saying it's better to have 4 sheets of paper for that gap. You need it to be enough that you don't have that issue. And it's a point. How valid it is will depend on how sturdy your stock is and really the preference you have for an unsightly gap. We used to put a lot of emphasis on the wood-to-metal fit of a well-made rifle. These days, with synthetic stocks, not that big of a deal perhaps, but folks who really appreciate craftsmanship in building firearms will notice all kinds of gaps between the wooden parts and the metal parts. And the tighter the fit, the better the craftsmanship of the rifle. But when it comes to a floating barrel, of course, you've got to have a gap. But it doesn't have to be such a big gap that you could run a canoe down it. So decide for yourself. But yeah, I think I Am Bear has got a point here. If you're free-floating your barrel minimally like that with just 1 sheet of paper and you are getting some inconsistency in your accuracy, you might want to open it up a little bit more. You might be getting a vibration. To check for that, look at your barrel when it's out of the stock. You might see some rubbing on the bluing where you're getting that vibration against it. You might also notice it as a pressure mark in the stock itself. So there are ways to look for that. But it is something to be concerned about. So we're going to give I Am Bear 4 gold stars for the barrel floating business, but we're not giving him any gold stars for the tang screw. All right, let's see. Willie. Willie's on a roasting thing too. Let's see if it's good or bad. Ron, I've noticed lately talk about barrel cooling when target shooting in the summer, but no one talks about what the temperature is when hunting in the late fall and winter. The air barrel temperature is freezing. You've got a rifle sighted in at summer or early fall temperatures. Well, what about point of impact shift in freezing temperatures? Sighting in a rifle by freezing the barrel in summer for winter hunting makes sense. Running air through the barrel if it's hot, or having a cooler full of ice to place the barrel in between shots, is that a good idea? One of those styrofoam frozen food shipping boxes, perhaps. Put a hole in it with a plastic sleeve to drive the barrel over the ice. Wow, Willie's really thinking here, and he's not thinking too far out of the box because this has been done. Long ago, guys were doing this. They were wondering, if I build this load in July and it's perfect, what's it going to be like if I go hunting and it's like 10 degrees out? Ooh, that's going to change the velocity. That's going to change the drop of my bullet. Suddenly things aren't going to be as precise as I thought they were. I'm not going to be zeroed. The easiest solution, of course, is when you get to your hunting destination in those temperatures, you re-zero that rifle. But the drops are still going to be different. Even if you're on at 100 yards, you're going to have a different drop regimen at 300. So some guys would test frozen barrels. They would take their ammunition, pack it in ice, maybe put it in the freezer overnight, then pack it in a cooler, just like Willie suggests here, on ice, go out to the range and shoot, but not shoot a warm barrel if they could help it. Some of them would even put the rifle in the freezer. So, it's legitimate. I don't know that it's absolutely necessary because with our ballistic calculators today, you can get that information pretty close. So go to the ballistic calculator online. There's a bunch of them up there. Just do a search, but then change the temperature. Get your data for 90 degrees or whatever you're building your load with in the summer, and then change it to what you anticipate hunting in December or whenever you're going. And it will cough out the differences in drops and drifts and velocity and all the rest of it. But do consider that some powders are less sensitive to changes in temperature than others. They're called extreme powders most of the time. Hodgdon has most of them. And even the original powders, the old 4350, for instance, you can get, I think, an extreme version of it, which means they've done something to it to make it less sensitive to changing temperatures. So then you're going to maintain the velocity even though it's a lot colder. But in addition to that, of course, is the density of the air. Regardless if the cartridge shoots at the same initial velocity, the colder air is going to be more dense, and that is going to slow your bullet down, and you will get increased drop. Lots to think about if you shoot long range, but if you keep everything inside of 300 yards, you can probably just concentrate on hunting and not worry about all these ballistic data things. All right, what else have we got here? ALBS has really taken me to task for another one of these target paper deals. I am notorious for putting a lot of holes in one sheet of paper as my target. Why do I do that, people ask? Paper's not that expensive. Put up a fresh target. And Albs says, I've pretty much decided that the lack of target changes is laziness. And he's right. I mean, that's really it, guys. I'm sitting on the bench and I've got a big sheet of paper and I'm shooting up in one corner. I'm just going to slide over to the other corner for my next group and down. And wherever I've got what I consider to be an adequate gap in which to put a 3-shot group without getting it confused with the others ought to work. And when I'm working with really accurate rifles, it does. The problem is I got in the habit of doing that over the years. And now I'm testing all sorts of rifles. Brand new, out of the box, and assuming that they're going to group reasonably well. And suddenly I've got a group 4 inches across the paper, nowhere close to where I was aiming, and that target gets pretty confused pretty quickly. Well, that means I've got to get off the bench, turn everything off, run on 100 yards, put up a new target, come back, sit down, let my heart rate slow down again, turn all the cameras back on, and start the show again. And yes, I'm lazy. I don't want to do that. Now, if the manufacturers whose rifles I am testing would send me really accurate rifles, this wouldn't be a problem. Hint, hint. Hey, we take them as they come, but thanks for all of your comments. Now, Betsy has a comment back there.
I think we need to be unlazy for our viewers.
Betsy wants me to become unlazy for our viewers. She's probably right. Okay, I will... I promise. What are you laughing at? She says, I'm not a Catholic, so I shouldn't do that. I promise that I will try to replace the paper targets so we don't get confused about which bullet went into which hole. Oh, golly. Okay, let's get chewed out about something else. This is from Tika Short. No, this is from Thomas in reference to a Tika short that we put up. This is where I had that sweet shooting Tika rifle, and I was shooting offhand at a steel plate from about 30 yards away to show what this short-barreled Batu rifle was supposed to be for, running game and stuff, and how quickly can you shoot it. So I shot at the target, 4 times quickly, and it worked out great, but as I came down, I dropped that rifle a little bit off my cheek as I cycled it. And this guy is saying the gold standard would be to keep the rifle shouldered while cycling the bolt. Don't I know it? We all know it, but I have seen experienced shooters do this. It's just really hard. And this is something that if you want to shoot quickly with a bolt action rifle, you do really need to work at this. I have seen professional guides who are supposedly protecting their hunters from charging buffaloes and lions and stuff, drop their bolt action rifles clear down to their hip to cycle it and then come back up. And that, of course, is really going to slow you down. A good PH, or a good hunter anyway, needs to be able to keep that rifle up where he can watch through the scope as he cycles. Now, with a big kicking rifle, you come out of recoil, you should already be cycling that bolt and using the recoil and climb of the rifle to help you bring that bolt back. And then you come forward and down with it. And if you keep it up against your cheek like this, you should come right back down to your target area, find that target charging you with its teeth bared, and make that second shot. And that's something to strive for. And I try to do that, but I still, as Thomas saw, drop it a little bit too much yet. So, good point. I appreciate that. I deserved it. Slap me upside the head there, Thomas. Good job, buddy. EV3 shorts on the 6.5 General and 243. Oh, I compared the 6.5 Grendel and the 243 Winchester. EV3 has something to say about that. I think you better check your math, Ron. Oh, God. I had trouble with that in school, too. 100 grain times 2350 equals 1,581 foot-pounds. 100 grains times 3,100, this must be feet per second, equals 2,133 foot-pounds. According to what you just said, the 243 has more than 550 more foot-pounds at the muzzle. Well, I don't know about that because I didn't do the math. I just went to a ballistic calculator and got that. So perhaps its math is off or your math is off, but I don't even know which exact numbers you're referring to because I can't remember what I did on that video. I don't know. Maybe I guessed, but I doubt it. I guessed. When I was doing a comparison between the 6.5 Grendel and the 243 Winchester, I don't think I guessed. But hey, guys, double check me. I always say, double check me. I'm giving you the best information I have. I always try to look these things up. But when I'm doing these podcasts and I get these questions cold, I haven't had time to look things up. But this looks to me like it was a researched broadcast. So I should have had that one right. And I still think I did, but who knows? The point is, if you look at my numbers and you think that's hogwash, go look it up. Check for yourself. And check those ballistic calculators. I use those because my math does suck. And I'm not going to be sitting there trying to figure things out with a formula when I can just get on a ballistic calculator and let it do the math for me. So maybe I'm wrong that way. Somebody else weigh in on that one. Do your research and find out what a 6.5 Grendel cranks out for muzzle energy with a 100 grain bullet and what a 243 Winchester cranks out with a 100 grain bullet. That would be fun to see. All right, Jimmy eats, actually. I wonder what he eats. I don't know, but Jimmy eats. And he says, I should ignore the Rube comment. I like these episodes. Oop, we might be pulling out of the swamps here, guys. Jimmy eats might be on my side. Let's keep going. They cover a wide array of information and are the perfect length for listening to on the drive to work and back. My only complaint is that I have to search back and forth between your two channels to see what is new. I haven't really deciphered what the schedule is for each channel. Obviously, this is a minor complaint. Thanks for the content. Yay, Jimmy, you saved me. I was about to commit suicide. Okay, Betsy. Jimmy Eats wants to know what the schedule is. Do we have a schedule for these things?
Schedule.
What is the schedule?
Tuesday, main channel, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time.
Tuesday's main channel, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time.
Wednesday, no.
No. Forget all that. Great job, Betsy. How are you at math? Podcast, Tuesday. 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Wednesday is, hold on Wednesday.
Is the main channel.
Main channel.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay. Tuesday's the podcast, Wednesday's the main channel.
And if we have extra that week,
Yep.
it'll be on Thursday or Friday at 6 p.m.
Okay, if we do an extra video that week, it'll be Thursday or Friday at 6 p.m. But they're always at 6 p.m. We've at least got some consistency there. 6 p.m., guys. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, sometimes Thursdays, sometimes Friday. Who knows? Maybe Sunday. That's roughly our schedule. We don't always make it. Crazy things happen, by the way, guys. Recently, the team that puts together this stuff for us, because neither Betsy nor I are going to be sitting here trying to put videos together and do all that complicated stuff. Life is too short. But there are some young people out there for whom that is nothing, and they do it for us. Recently, they were putting one together in time to be launched, and a storm hit, and all the electricity went out. Their computers were lying there gasping for breath, and they couldn't do anything. So it was late. Stuff like that happens. There's always some kind of a glitch. Oh, and Betsy started to do shorts at 5 p.m. every day.
Well,
Monday through Friday, they're going to be a short, like a 30 seconds to a minute or something. And that's at 5 on Mountain Time. If you're somewhere else, you can figure it out. We don't do math here, remember?
Or we're not stupid.
Okay, let's see what Scott has to say. Your wet noodle theory is BS. That's brilliantly successful. I think that's what it stands for. There's no such thing as barrel harmonics. A non-concentric bore will interfere with smooth bullet travel through it. Well, Scott, I will agree that a non-concentric bore will definitely interfere with smooth bullet travel. But what does that have to do with barrel harmonics? Two different topics there. There are barrel harmonics, by the way. But if anyone else out there has solid evidence that there is no such thing as barrel harmonics, let me know and give us some evidence to prove it, because I have never heard that there wasn't. I always heard there was. And essentially, guys, what this means, think of it like a guitar string. You've got this guitar string, and if you push your finger in certain points, it changes the vibration ratio, the rate, faster or slower, the waves. So you get a low pitch when there's a long string, and you shorten that string up, and it's a higher pitch. Similar thing happens in your barrel. You've got all that pressure in there and all the violence of that bullet coughing down it, and it vibrates, and if you press it at a certain spot, you're dampening that vibration, and the waves change, and that can affect your accuracy. Those are the harmonics we are talking about. And then they talk about nodes within your barrel, and those are places where your waves of that violent traveling through your barrel come together. So you've got this like a sine wave, two of them coming together like that, and where they narrow down, things are, I don't know if you'd say that they're settled or smooth or something, but that seems to be the sweet spot, or a node at which the barrel is consistent. So if every bullet leaves at one of those nodes, it's going to be consistent. So if you, for instance, would find that the node is 2 inches back from the muzzle of your barrel, you could cut the barrel back to that spot and get better accuracy. And a lot of guys have gotten great accuracy by shortening their barrels. Kind of hard to lengthen them, but you can shorten them to find that node. But the easier way is to work with your load, the cartridge itself, and change the pressure dynamic, and that changes where those waves reach those nodes, and you can push the node out to the muzzle, something along those lines. But it's barrel harmonics. Another way to think of it is a tuning fork. You get the right tune in the fork, and you touch it somewhere, and it changes the tone. That's what's going on with your barrels, more or less. Oh, my goodness. This is one of those gentlemen who didn't quite get the class on punctuation and capitalization. Every period after every word is a little excessive. Most people write in and they don't put any punctuation in, and this gentleman punctuates everything. I don't think I can read this, but... Don't read this? Okay. Julius, 7mm PRC. Oh, okay. Here's Julius responding to a video we did on the 7mm Remington Magnum compared to the 7 PRC. And Julius says, 7 PRC has the benefit of faster barrel twist? Exclamation point, question mark. Let me tell you something, Spomer. Uh-oh, we're back to the trashing.
Sorry.
Hey, you're going to end it on a low note, aren't you, hon?
It was not been very good.
All right, well, we've got to give everybody the full letter here. This is from Julius, very seriously now. Julius writes, 7 PRC has the benefit of a faster barrel twist. That must be what I said. Let me tell you something, Spomer. You can put a fast twist barrel on a 7 Rem mag, too! Exclamation point. You gun writers are unbelievable! Well, okay, Julius. I don't know that I'd stated that a 7 Remington Magnum cannot have a fast twist barrel. I think I was saying that standard 7mm Remingtons come with a 1 in 10 twist barrel, and the 7 PRC is set up with a 1 in 8-inch twist, so it's a lot easier to shoot the long high BC bullets in a factory-bought rifle in a 7 PRC than a 7 Rem Mag. Yes, I am an ignorant gun writer, but I did know that you could put a fast twist barrel on your rifle and chamber it for a 7 Rem Mag, and I do know that you can load the really longest, fastest, highest BC bullets in the 7 Rem Mag, but there are some issues in doing that, and you're not going to find it in factory loaded ammunition. So thanks for chewing me out. I really appreciate it. Okay, this is really nice because this is Betsy's new laptop. Yeah, she fried her last one. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I'm sure it was my fault. I dropped it. So she got a new one. I paid for it. So we're even on that one. At any rate, I ought to be able to read these. This is nice, honey. Nice and clear, crisp, beautiful. Nicely done. Joseph. Ron, I am really enjoying your videos as I prepare for my first elk hunt, hopefully in the fall of 2025. Well, I hope so too. I hope so, Joseph. Now, Sacco chose to use a 1 in 11 twist rate on my new 90 Quest rifle in 30-06 Springfield. That's unlike the typical 1 in 10-inch twist for 30-06. Therefore, I have dived deeply into bullet stabilization. You have presented this topic, but I'm thinking others might benefit from my primary lesson in succinct form, and here it is. Copper bullets are long for caliber and therefore require a faster spin to stabilize. As best I can tell, all factory loads with copper bullets would be, by calculation only so far, I haven't tested it yet, only marginally stable in my Sacco at my home altitude, leading me to now buy only cartridges with lead-based bullets to try at the range. With copper bullets gaining in popularity, please consider including this concept in your material. Could have saved me from buying my favorite copper cartridges that are less likely to group well. Thanks. Okay, Joseph, I appreciate that. You're onto something, but you might be overdoing it a little bit. I wouldn't write those off. Marginally stable has been around for a long time with traditional twist rates and some of the longer bullets. For instance, most famously, the 30-06 was known to shoot a 220 grain round nose bullet accurately in some rifles. And maybe it was because the twist weight was just that little bit different that you're mentioning, but not always. I know I've had rifles that had a 1 in 10 twist and they would not stabilize a 220 grain bullet, and someone else would have a different rifle with the same twist rate and his would shoot beautifully. So don't write it off. I don't know exactly what's going on with some of these, but when you're at that marginally stable area, doesn't mean you're necessarily not going to get good performance. So I would give it a try before I wrote it off. And then the other thing about the copper bullets being long for caliber, et cetera, they don't have to be too long for your twist rate. Just get a lighter bullet. In other words, if you've been shooting a 180 grain traditional bullet that stabilizes nicely, you don't want to then try to stabilize a 180 grain copper bullet because it will be longer. So you step down to the 165, for instance, and it'll probably stabilize. So you're definitely onto it, and it is worth looking into. And congratulations for using that stability chart. That sounds like the one on Burger, the calculator on the Burger bullet site that will ask you for the bullet diameter, the bullet length, the BC, the velocity, a few things like that, and then it will tell you whether or not it's going to stabilize in whatever twist rate. So you can get, and then this is why I always say it's better to get a twist rate that's a little bit too fast than too slow, because traditionally the twist rates were set up for the bullets that we were shooting in the 20th century. Well, now we've got all these super long, high BC bullets, and we're making them heavier than ever to take advantage of their ability to resist wind deflection, which is nice. So there's kind of new standards, and the rifles are still offered with traditional twist rates. Some of the older rifles will even have a little bit slower twist rate, so you do need to consider that stuff. But don't write off copper bullets entirely. Just consider going to a shorter and lighter one, because they retain so much mass that they generally perform terminally like the heavier lead core bullets. They don't lose any of their mass as they penetrate, and they'll shoot right through generally and just do really well. I've never had a problem with a lighter weight copper bullet in my hunting. Okay, good one. Appreciate that, Joseph. This is Wes from Alabama. Sweet home Alabama, Wes. Ron, I grew up deer hunting my whole life, and I have never heard the term minute of angle until recently while listening to your show. All I ever knew was accurate enough to put the bullet in the vital zone. My rifle is a Ruger M77 Mark II in 270 Winchester. I shoot Hornady Super Performance 130 grain SST bullets, and it has worked wonders for me. I have two questions regarding this MOA. What is a reasonable MOA expectation for the M77 Mark II? I understand it's an entry-level hunting rifle and not a higher-end precision rifle. Also, what is the line that separates a hunting rifle versus a precision hunting rifle? Thanks for your help and keep up the good work. I enjoy the show, and I'm slowly but surely learning something new every episode. Well, thank you, Wes. And thanks for being bold enough to admit that you don't know what MOA is. A lot of people will pretend they know what it is and really don't, but we're more than happy to share what we know about it. Minute of angle describes the cone-shaped dispersion of the bullet out of the barrel. So obviously when your bullet leaves the barrel, it does not drive forward at a precise line with the bore. It's going to veer off to the left or right, up or down to a varying degree. A really accurate rifle consistently keeps its bullets inside of a fairly narrow cone. And I say cone because when it emerges from the barrel, obviously it's spot on, right in the middle. And then it starts to diverge. Well, when you get to 100 yards, if that divergence of your bullets is no more than an inch, we call that minute of angle. That is the minute of angle cone that flies out. So at 300 yards, it would be 3 inches. And at 600 yards, it would be 6 inches. It just increases an inch each time. If it would be a half MOA bullet, you would cut those things in half. So it would be a half-inch group, all the bullets inside of a half-inch circle at 100 yards, inside of a 1.5 inch circle at 300 yards. Wow, that's great stuff, right? This is why long-range shooters really want accuracy. But for what you're talking about here, deer hunting and stuff with your 270, shoot. Let's say you had a rifle that only grouped 2 inches at 100 yards. That's going to be 4 inches at 200 yards, 6 inches at 300 yards. 300 yards is probably as far as most of us are going to shoot at game. What's wrong with that? That's bigger than the vital zone of your deer. Hold for the middle of the chest and you're going to have a killing shot. But for somebody who wants to hit a target at 800 yards, yikes, that's not good enough. But that's what MOA is. Now, technically, MOA is not just 1 inch. It's a little bit more than that. It's 1.047. I think that's the exact right number. But it really doesn't amount to a hill of beans for shooting out to even 1,000 yards. You know, at 1,000 yards, you'd have a 10.5 roughly inch group versus a 10. But again, precision target shooters are going to be concerned about it. But for hunting, shoot, you're going to do just fine. But the main point here is that particular rifle of yours, I had one, an M77 in 270, and it would shoot better than MOA with some hand loads that I built for it. But even loads that would only group 1.5, I easily go hunting for deer and elk out to 400 yards and stick them in the vital zone. Just run those numbers and you're going to see how you don't need MOA inside of 300 yards for sure. But 1.5, that was kind of a standard back in the day. You were really happy if your rifle grouped minute and a half, 1.5 inches at 100 yards. Really appreciated that back in the day. If you got one that shot better than that, you had a real hummer. Of course, these days, there are so many precision rifles out there. So the difference between hunting rifles and these precision rifles is, of course, you're putting a lot more effort and money into that precision rifle, and it's not particularly designed for convenient hunting. They're a little bit heavy, maybe a little bit long. They got a little bit too many bumps and holes and protuberances on them and different things. The classic 20th century bolt action hunting rifle design evolved out of practicality. We just sort of figured out that I didn't need this and I didn't need that, and lighter and smoother, and things function perfectly for hunting. And this takes into account not just shooting it accurately, but carrying it, being able to maneuver it in brush and thick woods to get off a shot when you needed to, be able to shoot it comfortably when you're standing, when you're kneeling, sitting, going prone. Some rifles don't do that very well. And especially carrying it. Most hunters, unless you're just sitting in a stand, soon realize that they spend most of their time hiking. We always kind of joke, did you go on a nature hike today? Because if you didn't get your deer, you're just hiking in nature, which is wonderful and it's fun. But look for a deer at the same time. You don't need a 12-pound rifle with a 44-inch barrel hanging over your shoulder to do that. So those are the things you want to consider. But a lot of guys will use these precision rifles, go hunting with them, and be perfectly happy. I would like to think that if they ever used a lightweight, sleek hunting rifle, traditional style, they would soon discover that it was a little more fun to carry around, but maybe not. You take your pick. There's lots of room out here for everybody, except for when it comes to drawing tags. Betsy cannot draw a moose tag to save her life. Neither can I. All right, Buddy from Pennsylvania, it looks like. Hello, Ron. I've listened to every podcast you've done, and I've watched most of your videos, and I cannot remember you doing one on the most affordable big game rifle setup. For example, whitetails to elk, probably what most American hunters are looking to hunt this year in and year out. And I was just curious of your opinion for a $1,000 rifle, the caliber, the scope, the sling, the combinations that the average American can afford. P.S. Thank you for all the free information and entertainment you've provided me over the years. Well, thank you for appreciating that, buddy, and I appreciate you for appreciating it. I'll see if I can give you a little more free information here. I've done some stuff on inexpensive rifles. We kind of test everything here. I've tested the cheapest rifles, I think, and some of the most expensive ones, and everything in between. And of course, I don't know what the average American can afford. But having grown up as what I would consider an average American, just a poor country kid, we were able to afford whatever the rifles were back in those days. And I can remember them starting off at around $100 up to $200. I remember I bought my first Ruger M77 in 1975 or 6. And it was $200 down at the hardware store. Oh my gosh, what was it called? It was in Mitchell, South Dakota. I think it was Real Hardware. It was one of those hardware stores that specialized in guns and reloading equipment, and it got so popular with that you didn't go in there to buy real hardware. You just went in there to buy your rifles and your powder and your pellets and all the stuff you needed for hunting and shooting. And then if you were really desperate, there might be some screws back in a corner and a hammer or something. But that was the place, and that's where I got that Ruger for $200. These days, that same Ruger would probably cost you, gosh, what's the Hawkeye going for? Walnut and blued steel Hawkeye rifle, probably going to run you $1,500, $1,000 to $1,500 at any rate. Wow, what a difference. So, but the crazy thing is there are plenty of rifles now, especially bolt actions, as inexpensive as $400 and $500. And most of the big brands will have those. Savage, Mossberg, Winchester, even Browning. They have what I call starter rifles. And one of the ways that they've gotten the prices down is by going to a molded stock. Instead of having different parts to screw on the stock, everything's already there. You just drop the barreled action in. So if you break the trigger guard or the trigger bow on one of those, you can't screw another one on because it's molded right into the rest of the stock. And it's fairly inexpensive plastic, and they're a little bit flexible, so they really hog out the barrel channel, shall we say, so that your barrel doesn't touch it. You have a free-floated barrel, and then when the stock bends a little bit under pressure or it gets hot and it changes somewhat, you're not going to be touching your barrel and things. But those rifles will quite often shoot MOA right out of the box. It's really quite amazing. But they're probably not the most durable rifles in the world. So still, you can expect to get at least 1.5 MOA out of rifles like that, and roughly, like I said, around as inexpensively as 400. So if you went up to $1,000, you could pick up a pretty darn good rifle. Now on scopes, I always say you want to drop at least $150. We have tested some ridiculously inexpensive scopes that ended up being darned effective, quite bright, clear, would adjust pretty darn accurately. Be more than good enough for a hunting rifle for $30, but they're made in China, and if you're like me, you don't really want to be buying all the Chinese stuff. I like to support America, American workers, et cetera, et cetera. But optics, pretty hard to find optics made in America. They're German optics, Austrian optics, a lot of European really high quality stuff, and then there's a lot of good stuff out of Japan, and of course you've got all the camera companies now seem to be out of Japan, Canon, Nikon, Sony, and all that stuff. So there's your glass and your lenses and your high-quality things. But a lot of American brands will have their lenses built in those places because they have the big factories that can make them. But they'll bring them over here where we make the aluminum tubes and all the other parts for them. So it's kind of a combination thing, which I'm okay with because that's the way the world works these days. We are so interconnected. And you can get some really good ones for $150 on up. And I'm sure most of those, though, are being built in the Philippines, Japan, or maybe China. And the American company just puts their name on it. So you want to kind of look for that. The better ones, though, I think you're going to be looking at closer to $500 and up to $1,000. So I've often said, spend as much on your scope as you do your rifle, or these days even more, because as we said, you can get some of those inexpensive rifles that'll shoot really well, but if the scope isn't any good, it's not going to shoot very well. So do consider getting a little more high dollar scope. But I've usually found, that you drop $500 on a scope, it's going to be a pretty darn dependable and good quality scope. But then minimize the bells and whistles. You don't want one with a parallax adjustment on the side and illuminated reticle with a battery in it and adjustable turrets. And the more of those things you put on there, the better chance that you're not going to get your money's worth unless you really are paying a lot of money. But we've also found, and we pretty much know, that a basic scope in the 2 or 3 to 8 or 10x range is going to be all you need for shooting your game cleanly at responsible distances. We'll say 600 yards. We've seen it happen. Just recently at Elk Boot Camp, a young man with a 2.5 to 8x scope on a stock Winchester Model 70 in 270 Winchester shot the best of anybody there, including the ones with $8,000 custom rifles. It was crazy. Betsy says, time is up, Ron. Shut up. Oh, oh, she didn't say shut up, but it was implied. Okay, well, we're going to have to get to JP and Troy and Alan later, but we sure appreciate Wes and Joseph and Buddy and old Ted and Sterling and everyone else who wrote in on these, and even the guys who chewed me out. Now, we've got to pick somebody for the comment of the week. Now, we're going to give it to a nasty commenter or somebody who was nice to me this time. There we go. It's the famous Doug Adams bell sound indicating we are going to tell you who our comment of the week is, and it's Old Ted. Old Ted was the gentleman talking about losing his hearing and reminding us all to protect our hearing, and here's the way you do it. This is a shell shock, the old traditional muff, but these are a sponsor of ours. They appreciate our channel, and we appreciate them because they make one of the most comfortable, the most comfortable headset like this that I have ever used. I can wear this thing for hours on end out there, and I don't get a pressure headache or even uncomfortable. It's just got a wonderfully soft surface around here, and they enclose my ears nicely without pinching anything. So Shell Shock offers the kind of protection Old Ted is talking about. If you guys do not protect your ears from loud sounds, you're going to end up like Betsy and me. Betsy was flying in a helicopter for 25 years as a nurse, a life flight rescue nurse. I mean, she rappelled down those ropes and picked people. She never repelled. Oh, I knew she was going to jump on that one. She did jump one time and didn't break her leg. But at any rate, she was riding on those helicopters, and that really damaged her hearing. Even though she had some protection on, these things will knock about 30 decibels of sound off the top of a gunshot. Gunshots can go anywhere from 140 to 160 decibels, and 30 is a big reduction. So you're going to want to wear these. I will quite often, usually, wear these over the soft rubber plugs that I put in my ears. On the range, it's easy to do. In hunting, not so much. But if I were a stand hunter, I would have these in my blind, and when something looked like it was about to happen, I would pop them on. They've got sound. There's the microphone thing in here and enhances the sound, so you can turn it up, and then you'll hear the little woods sounds of the mice pretending they're deer to drive you crazy. But you'll be able to hear everything if you want to wear them. And as comfortable as they are, you could wear them for extended periods. Yeah, and the other option or addition is suppressor. And again, a suppressor will knock about 30 decibels of sound off. That still leaves you with a really loud rifle, like a 160 decibel rifle. You still have 130, and that's more than loud enough to do some damage. A lot less damage than 160, obviously, but still some. But if you combine it, woohoo, that really solves it for you. You're knocking 60 decibels off. So bingo. And if you like to go to rock concerts, you might want to wear these too, because rock concerts are as loud as gunshots, and it goes a lot longer. So thanks to Ted for bringing that up. I know it is not the most intriguing topic we can discuss when we're talking about ballistics and cartridges and new rifles and scopes, but it is critically important, because you don't want to be like old Ted and ask, what? Or like me, I do the same thing. And when Ted and I get together, it's sign language. Hey, I want to thank everybody for commenting, chewing me out, patting me on the back. It's all good, guys. We're all learning here, and we're all, I think, on the same boat when it comes to hunting honest and shooting straight. See you next time.